First off, I want to thank the brave men and women who work behind the wall. I want to thank them on a national level because their job goes unrecognized.
How do they try to turn a guard?
Well, correctional officer. Sorry, I apologize. But correctional officer.
How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji, host of Tear Talk. I'm going to forward this video over to Connie Alleyne. Remember, she's been on my show a few times already by now. She was a health administrator, and I want to get her perspective on the issue that happened in Missouri with the prison nurse, Amy Murray, who decided to murder her husband by using antifreeze and then lighting the house on fire because she fell in love with an inmate by the name of Eugene Claypool. So I wanted her perspective for two reasons. One, she's a health administrator, so what do you expect from your employees? That's one. And second thing, what does antifreeze do to the body? I'm very curious, and I think some of my followers are curious. So guys, when we get back from our sponsors, we're going to give the show over to Connie. Now remember, guys, the show Tear Talk's for you. You brave men and women that work behind that wall. So please, if you haven't subscribed, interact, engage, comment, hit that bell. That bell's going to notify you every time I post up a video. Stand by for our sponsor, and then we'll have Connie Alleyne.
I wanted to attend a university that had an intelligence program. I wanted to look at problems different. I wanted to increase my critical thinking abilities. AMU offered those avenues to expand. Obtaining your degree as an adult, you're actually paying yourself and investing in yourself. You can't put a dollar on it, it's priceless. It's something that can never be taken away from you.
American Military University. Learn from the leader.
Connie Alleyne here, and tonight I don't know how I feel about this conversation. We've got Amy Murray, prison nurse who decided she loved an inmate so much that she was going to kill her husband. In my mind, this woman clearly came into the environment. I mean, I don't know how long she worked there. I don't know, you know, those details haven't quite been revealed, but you know, as someone who really supports civilians in corrections, and I'm very big on how much value civilians offer to the collective DOC intelligence, I really feel that, you know, this woman clearly came into the environment already broken. She came into the environment with a pretty low self-esteem, clearly had some self-confidence issues, because I just can't imagine that she could meet an inmate, have minimal interactions with this inmate, and get to a point where she can decide she is going to kill her husband. And for those who don't know, you know, nurses, health services, we have interactions with inmates all the time. We may not spend a significant amount of time with them, but we see them every day depending on how sick they are, right? So we go through sick call, we go through Medline, regular treatments, you know, whatever is going on with that inmate, we provide care, right? So there are times where you may see the same inmate day after day. Maybe if the inmate's diabetic, or if they come down for an injection for whatever reason, or those inmates who come down for Medline or for sick call, they've always got an issue, right? Some of that stuff we try to work out, and we try to make sure like there's a rhyme and a reason for every encounter that we have with them. But, you know, some of them are very nifty, right? They figure out how to get to you if they want to get to you. But clearly, you know, this inmate saw something in this woman that he could capitalize on. And whether it was a matter of her coming in and being already unhappy, because I feel like you can't get to a point where you're going to murder your husband, right? Murder a loved one for an inmate who cannot do anything for you, period. Like, this inmate is already in prison for murder, right? This inmate is already not going no place ever. So the fact that you would put your livelihood on the line for an inmate is beyond me. But we'll move away from that, because that's not what this is about. You know, what this is about is this woman got to a point where I don't want to say, I don't know if she was completely manipulated. Did she walk in looking for an inmate, like looking for companionship, looking for partnership? Anything is possible, right? But at the same token, I think you have to be mindful that when civilians come into the environment, there are a lot of things that they just don't know can happen to them. And if you don't have a system in place where they're taught, you have things like this that happen. Clearly, getting to a point where you're going to poison your loved one is absurd. But something happened, right? Whether it was something that broke in her, whether it was something that the inmate had on her that made her do this, right? Because this inmate is locked up. He cannot physically do something to her. Perhaps there was the threat of being able to do something to her or her family. I mean, who knows, right? We don't know the details, so I'm going to stop speculating. But what I do want to talk about is just the antifreeze, right? So we already know what antifreeze does. It's a liquid that prevents radiators in cars from overheating or from freezing. And this woman now has taken antifreeze and poisoned her loved one. So what happens is the antifreeze, there's already hazardous, poisonous elements inside the antifreeze, right? So she's now given this husband, now deceased husband, antifreeze. And so what does that do to him? I mean, so the antifreeze gets converted into, as the body tries to metabolize it, it gets converted into other really toxic substances. And so what those substances ultimately do is they interfere with the kidneys, they interfere with the liver, the lungs, the brain, the nervous system. And I mean, really within 24 to 72 hours, you can be in all-out organ failure, right? Significant organ damage if you don't get help. I mean, from what I've seen and what I've read about it, you know, you lose consciousness and you can fall into a coma. So the fact that not only did she do something so awful to her husband, but then she set the house on fire. Like, could it get any worse for this woman? And I mean, really, what was it that could have transpired between this nurse and this inmate to cause her to do something so disgusting, like disgusting, to her husband? I mean, we don't know, but I feel like we have to do a better job being vigilant with training civilian employees who have any access to inmates, have them understand how dangerous it could be. So yes, the environment is inherently dangerous because we're dealing with criminals. But then there's that subculture of inmates, right? Who there's a whole different life. There's a whole different train of thought, a whole different, like, they don't think the way we think. We come in, we want to do our jobs. Oh, this is so great. We want to nurture. Like, no. Here's the scope of your work, right? As a nurse, medical treatment. And I know there's been some debate about how do we refer to the inmates? Do we refer to them as a patient, right? Because in the medical field, that's how we refer to people we care for. These are our patients. Or do we refer to them as inmates? And do the lines get blurred when we begin to think of them as a patient, right? Because in your mind, patient is what a patient in a hospital, right? Because oftentimes they come in, they're sick enough. This population is sicker by far than any other population that is out there, right? So you've got this sick inmate population who you're going to have regular encounters with. And is it really something we should be thinking about, right? If I call them an inmate, I will be reminded that this is inmate so-and-so. This is inmate Jane Doe. This is inmate John Doe. If I say this is my patient, then there's this care and compassion. There's a different feel that comes with a sick patient. You know, what do you feel when you want this person to be well? You want them to get better. And I think that as medical professionals, sometimes we are challenged. We're challenged by wanting to fix it, right? Is there a cure? We're advocating for the best treatment that they could have so that they could have the best outcomes following treatment. You know, as a professional, you want that your care has made a good impact on someone's life. The last thing that you want is to be thinking that I went into work, I was caring for a patient, and I wasn't able to help them feel better. The pain, the patient is still suffering. I couldn't advocate for a particular medication. I couldn't advocate to get this person in a comfortable state of existence. And I think that we have to be very mindful or thoughtful about how we refer to the inmate population, how close we allow ourselves to get to that population. I think advocating, there's a fine line, how we advocate for them, right? If it's a life or death situation and it's a matter of someone's livelihood, right? There's certain standards of care that we are expected to provide. And if we don't, then we are negligent, right? But I think that when you get to a point where you're seeing the same inmate over and over again, and you're having certain interactions with that inmate over and over again, as the professional, you have to be able to say, this is not appropriate. You have to be able to say, it's time for me to take a step back. Plenty of times I've had my nurses, they're doing meds or they're going into the unit because we're on lock and they're doing meds in the unit, or it's early meds or meds before court, that if they're seeing the same inmates over and over, there's times where they'll talk to their partner and be like, all right, let's switch up. You do L through Z and I'll do A through M. Right? Just so that it's not you interacting with the same inmates all the time. But I think it's a matter of really being aware of how you interact with these inmates, the things that they say, the things you allow them to say, if you don't nip things in the bud, like it goes far beyond what you are expecting. And unfortunately for Amy Murray, she's going to be in there, right? She is now an inmate. She will never see this man that she killed her husband for, right? Like, oh, anyway, that's all I got for you tonight. You know, hopefully it was insightful. Hopefully it gave you a little something to understand the impact of antifreeze on the body, but also just an understanding of, you know, the need for appropriate training for civilian employees. So I'm just going to plug myself for a second. I am the founder and CEO of the Civilian Corrections Academy, and this is what we focus on. Focus on making sure that civilian employees who step into the environment really understand the realities of what they're getting themselves into and how they're going to stay safe. So until next time, thank you so much for listening. I hope I was helpful, and all right, I'm out.